This is Sports Coaching Assignment 1, and it was released on the 16th of the 10th, and it's due in on the 4th of the 11th, which is the Sunday of half term. So please make sure you make that deadline. You can see the criteria on the front. We've got P1, P2, M1, M2 and D1. But we're going to look inside and look a bit more detail at what we're looking for each of these criteria. So we've got the vocational scenario, and it says that you've completed your work experience at SGS College alongside your study programme, and the head of the academies has asked you to write a report on the roles, responsibilities and skills used by a coach. So first of all, it says the report requires you to give a detailed account of 4 roles. That could be any one of these 4, so an innovator, a friend, a manager, a trainer, a role model or an educator. Then you must describe 4 responsibilities, and it can be any of these 4, so legal obligations, child protection, insurance, professional conduct, health and safety, equal opportunities, knowledge of the coaching environment. And then you must apply that to 2 contrasting coaches from 2 contrasting sports. So what I mean by that is you might want to do a grassroots coach and a professional coach, and they must come from 2 different sports. So it might be netball and football. And then you must produce, finally, you must produce some information or describe 3 skills of that coach, and that can be from this list here. So communication, organisation, analysing, problem solving, evaluating, and time management, and how they implement those skills within what they do. If that's just for the past, so you're just describing here. If you're looking for the merit, then you go on and you explain those roles, responsibilities and skills in more detail. So you need to say, make it clear why each coach needs to fulfill the role and responsibility, so why it's important for them in their role as an individual coach. So for example, why is it important for Pep Guardiola to be a friend? What benefit has that got to him? And how these will impact the athlete. So for example, if Pep Guardiola is a friend of Bernard Mendy, then what impact does that have on the athlete, and how does it support the athlete to become a better player? Furthermore, you'll need to expand on how and why these skills are used and how they contribute to success. So it might be the way that Pep Guardiola becomes a friend, and how that has an impact on Bernard Mendy becoming a better player, making the team ultimately more successful. Okay, you need to do that for both coaches though. So if you're looking for the merit, you need to apply it to both coaches. Okay, so all we're looking for the merit is expansion on the description and explaining those roles, responsibilities and skills you picked up in the first section. So I would immerse them within that section, and I'll talk to you about it now in this example here before we move on to the distinction. So a learner here has done the assignment, and we'll just make it a bit larger so you can see it. So they picked Tony Minicello, who's Jess Ennis's coach, and what they've done here is they've talked about the coach is an innovator, but they've also, so here for example, they've said how he's an innovator, and then they've said how that has an impact on Jess Ennis's performance. So they've explained how he does it and how it has an impact on Jess's performance. Then they've gone on to do a friend, an educator and a role model in a similar fashion. So they've done the description and the explanation of the roles here, the 4 roles for Tony Minicello. They've then gone on and done the skills of Tony Minicello and the responsibilities. Okay, so there's their pass and merit for the 1 coach. However, they must apply it for 2 coaches. So if we scroll down, what we'll see is so I think that word unprofessional is not quite the right word. What they mean is a grassroots level football coach. But here they've done a grassroots level football coach, which is not an athletics coach, because the first one was an athletics coach, because you've got a contrasting coach who's not professional and also is doing a different sport. They then talked about how this coach is a role model. Then they've talked about how he's an educator, a friend and an innovator. They've then done the same for skills. This is starting to get close to potentially not meeting the standards, so you need to make sure that you keep the standards. And then they've done the responsibilities. So that is their pass and merit there. If we go back to the assignment brief, the last section is the distinction, and we should all be challenging ourselves with this criteria, because actually this assignment is not challenging and we do have the information. It's about how we apply it in an assignment. And I know we've done it lots and lots of times, and it's about just putting some time aside and making sure you get it right. Okay, so for the distinction, you'll need to assess the similarities and differences in the roles, responsibilities fulfilled, and the skills utilised between the two coaches. This should be underpinned with research and clearly linked to the success of the coaches. So if we go back to the document, we're looking at comparing and contrasting these two coaches. And what this learner's done here is they've gone, right, here's the roles and how they do the roles similarly, but also differently. Okay, so they've compared and contrasted Tony Milicello to the grassroots football coach and said, right, this is how they do the role of an innovator similarly, but likewise, this is how it's done differently, and this is why they do it differently. And they've done that for each of the roles, okay, making reference to the coaches throughout. Then they've done it for responsibilities, so they've said how they carry out their responsibilities the same, but also how they do it differently, with specific examples. Okay, supporting what they're saying. And then finally, they've done it for the skills, the 3 skills that they've talked about. So how they do it similarly, but also differently. What should be required at this stage, and this was a distinction piece of work, is actually where we've got information from, we should be referencing. So at the bottom here, we should be encouraging the learners, or you as a learner, to be placing the sources where you've gathered information from. That doesn't mean that you can copy and paste. That means that actually the source, you've looked at it, you've understood it, and then you've applied it to your work. Okay, this piece of work was an excellent piece of work. It was a distinction criteria, and if we scroll through, I don't know whether it gives you the, but it was 5%. Okay, similarity, 5% similarity. So we need to make sure that actually we make sure that the work is our own. Okay, there's an example of the assignment. There's no excuse not to get it right. Okay, you just need to apply some time to it. But the first thing you need to do is identify your coaches. I know in class that we've done Pep Guardiola for football, who is a professional coach, and we have done Sam Williams, who is a club level coach for a club in Exeter for rugby. So we know we've got 2 contrasting coaches there. If you want to base it on that, you don't necessarily need to base it on that. You can base it on 2 different coaches if you wish to. But remember, they must be contrasted in terms of their level, and they must be contrasting in terms of they do not coach the same sport.